Well, good morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Tuesday, April the 1st, 2025. That's day 1133 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. It is April 1st, but this is not the place to make jokes. So everything here will be very serious and straightforward. And just to be clear, everything I am reporting today is true to the best of my knowledge, right? So let's begin with last night's missile and drone attack. It was just a missile attack, which is very unusual. Very, very unusual. And one cannot help but wonder why. Because if Russia has this shit, they send it. You know, they just lost 96 multi-million dollar missiles each, right? I mean, we really don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars went up in smoke at Engels Air Force Base, but it was a lot of money and weapons. And so we saw these two modified guided missiles. These were originally ship-to-ship missiles, but they've been modified for ship-to-land activities, these X-59 69s. Two of them were launched from the Zaporizhia area, and they were both shot down, 100% interception rate. Where were the drones? I don't know. I don't know. Now, President Trump, I'll go ahead and play this for you.
By the way, I see he's trying to back out of the rare earth deal. And if he does that, he's got some problems. Big, big problems. We made a deal on rare earth. And now he's saying, well, I want to renegotiate the deal. He wants to be a member of NATO. Well, he was never going to be a member of NATO. He understands that. So if he's looking to renegotiate the deal, he's got big problems.
It is so frustrating and difficult listening to this liar, this con man in his cheap suit with his tie too long. Look, there is no rare earths deal. I mean, there is barely the framework under which a deal could be crafted. And Trump once again changed that framework from what had been agreed to when Zelensky flew to Washington to be insulted by this piece of shit. The Ukrainians have the patience of saints. I'll tell you, it is astonishing how carefully they are handling this megalomaniac idiot. Needless to say, Ukraine shouldn't take any deal that's not in its interest. And the current deal that's on the table, the latest rewrite by him, does not look good at all from what we know about it for Ukraine. It looks like a case of neo-colonial economic coercion. And I'll tell you, America, I think we're better than that. We're better than this agent of chaos here. So we will watch this story as it evolves and as we get reactions from Kyiv. I'll let you know. But the way that things stand, I pray to God that the Ukrainians reject this deal. You got to reject Trump. I mean, he is poison to everyone who works with him. It's a mistake. Now, this guy, this is Pastor Mark, which is not actually his real name, but Pastor Mark is one of Trump's grifters, is what he is. He lied about his college degree. He has no college degree. He's a 3-time college dropout with no degree. He lied about his military service. He was never in the United States military, any branch of it, though he claimed 7 years in the National Guard and service in Afghanistan. So if you just said you were in the National Guard and you never left North Carolina, you might get away with it. But then to claim that you saw action in Afghanistan, he's just a piece of shit, stolen valor grifter who has 3 times failed to win election to the United States Congress. However, Now he claims to be Trump's spiritual advisor. Anybody who knows Trump at all knows he has no spirit, therefore no spiritual advisor. Certainly not this guy. His spiritual advisors tend to be very women of loose morals and blonde hair. So, as far as I can tell, this guy is just another Trump grifter who's claiming to be Trump's spiritual advisor with no real ear to the president. And flashing these phony credentials, he came here to Ukraine and toured Bucha. Bucha, of course, is the site of the horrible massacre of civilians. The stories that have come out of Bucha are nightmarish in their detail. And it is the 3-year anniversary of the liberation of Bucha after 5 weeks of Russian occupation. So this grifter came here to capitalize on that. Now, look, I don't know if he's got an audience or not, but he is saying the right things. He's talking about the bravery of the Ukrainian people. He's talking about how they are a wall between the godless, evil Russians and the rest of the democratic world. And he's talking about how they're not looking for handouts. They want weapons to defend themselves in the face of this aggressor nation. So, look, you got to consider the source. I know you don't want everybody in your camp. This is a person that no one should want in their camp, by all accounts. However, he is saying the right things to the maggots, right? He's a maggot, and he's in that maggot world, and he's saying the right things to them. Now, I do not believe for a second he has the president's ear, but if he does, good. He needs more people talking to him like this. As I say, yesterday was the 3rd-year anniversary of the liberation of Bucha. Bucha is right outside of Kyiv. It was known as a pleasant middle-class kind of area in a forest, in the forest. It was left in ruins after the Russians got done with it. Just 5 weeks they were there. And during that 5 weeks, the city became a living hell by all accounts. Russian forces tortured and killed residents. That's where the mass grave of over 400 Ukrainians can be found. They did this sometimes for their sheer amusement or on baseless accusations of ties to Ukraine's defense forces, according to the Kyiv Post. And that history, that story is well documented in other places. We need not dwell on it here. Finnish PM, I believe this is the Finnish prime minister, not the Finnish president. It's very hard for Americans to deal with this head of state, head of government thing. But anyway, he's a golfer. So he went to play a little golf diplomacy with Trump. He said that they had an important meeting. He said that they talked about bilateral security agreements and Ukraine. And most importantly, PM Stubb here, Alexander Stubb, said that when Trump asked him if he could trust Putin, he very plainly said, "You cannot. You cannot." Now, whether or not any of that got through the layers of fake tan into that brain saturated by minoxidil and fake tan, I don't know. But he did say the words to him, "You cannot trust him." So we will see whether or not his words had any effect. In my mind, for Trump, this is just another European freeloader looking for a free round of golf. I doubt very much that he has very much respect for Mr. Stubb at all. Why would he? He has no respect for anybody. Now, this is very interesting to me. The Russians have been depending on their stockpiles of Soviet equipment to keep the war going. And they are burning through those stockpiles at record pace. I mean, if Ronald Reagan were alive to see this, he'd be applauding every day. They just hit a milestone with tanks lost. They just surpassed 10,500 tanks destroyed or captured in Ukraine. Now, that's almost as many as the U.S. lost in World War II. 11,000 tanks we lost in World War II. The Russians have lost nearly that in 3 years in Ukraine. And like I say, they've been counting on their Soviet stockpiles, the ability to repair those, retrofit them, and get them out to the front to keep going. Well, look what's happening. In 2022, they were able to refurbish or produce new 1,500 tanks. Dropped to 1,100 the next year. Dropped to 600 the next year. They are now producing only 25 a month. Why? Well, because making a new tank takes a month, right? And you only have so many production lines. So there aren't a lot of new ones being made at all. However, they had been able to process refurbishments from storage at a high rate until now. Why do we think that is? Well, let's take a look at the storage lot. When they went through here and they took tanks first, which ones do you think they took? They took the ones that were least damaged, the ones that could most easily be repaired. Then when they came back for more, there were fewer of those. And then it got worse and worse and worse. What's left here is likely unsalvageable, except as scrap metal. And so what they're pulling out now is so badly damaged, it's taking 5 times as long to repair and refurbish one than it had been taking before. And this is a big problem. The T-72, the workhorse of the Russian army, we're seeing fewer and fewer of those on the battlefield. They simply don't have them anymore. And that's good news for everybody. Now, except, of course, the Russians. The Russians who are going into battle in things like this. What is this, you may ask? It looks like a shed. It looks like an outhouse. It looks like a place where your grandpa grows his weed. No, what this is a tank. I know, it's hard to imagine, right? No visibility, no turret rotation. No, I mean, these guys are so desperate to try to stay alive that they are covering their tanks in anti-drone chains and rubber, hard rubber. Because look what the alternative is. This is a real thing. This is a bright aquamarine Lada that participated in a recent advance in the Pokrov's direction. Now, as I understand it, the column was made up entirely of civilian cars. The lack of tanks and armored personnel vehicles is driving the Russian infantry to steal local civilian cars, convert them for battle use, and drive these into the front line. Where you can see this one is completely ensnared in barbed wire, completely unfit to purpose. Now, tanks and heavy armor are not all that the Russians are out of. They seem to be out of men and ideas for recruiting men. Because all these people lying on the floor, they're not the victims of a bank robbery. The Russian military police have come into this gym in downtown Moscow, told everybody to get on the floor and are checking everybody's documents, and young men of service age who can be conscripted are being taken away. This is happening in gyms, nightclubs, warehouses, and factories all over Moscow and St. Petersburg. Now, up until this point, the Russians haven't done forced conscription out of the capital or St. Petersburg because they're afraid of the political backlash. Well, apparently they're down to a point where they have no choice. The Russians are running out of equipment, men, and money. And that is the same recipe that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, the Ukrainians are so brilliant, right? while the Russians devolve away from armored assaults to civilian vehicles, away from transport carriers to donkeys, horses, and mules, and in one case, a camel. The Ukrainians are using this war to innovate. To innovate, innovate, innovate. This is my favorite one yet. You know, a lot of these drones go down over the enemy territory, right? So what does the enemy do? This is for both sides. They go out, they take the drone, and they reprogram it for their purposes and use it for themselves, right? Who wouldn't? Ukrainians have smartened up to this. What they're doing now is they're burning out the USB ports so that you can't flash the drive, right? You can't overwrite the firmware, the software that's written to the chips. Can't do it. So they burn out the USB ports and any other communication ports so that nobody can reprogram them. Then on top of that, they put into them virus software that lets the Ukrainians know the drone's location. So now some drone operator picks this up, takes it back to the shop, thinking he's going to rework it into something that the Russians can use. Suddenly, the drone base is lit up for Ukrainian artillery. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. What you're seeing here is a large fire in Bryansk. That's occupied territory. In the Zaporizhia Oblast. Sorry, that took a second. Down on the Sea of Azov. Now, we do not know what is blowing up there, but given the size of the explosion, it either had to be an ammunition dump or, as some local sources are suggesting, it was an S-400 air defense system at the port of Bryansk. Now, again, we don't know, but Russia is on fire. Well, that's temporarily occupied territory, so you can't say Russia's on fire. Let me play this video for you. This is video of the Ukrainians destroying a TOS-1A. Now, this is a thermobaric weapon, right? It's got a short range, about 6 kilometers, about 4 miles, so they have to be up by the front, and we're seeing them destroyed one after another. And Russia does not have many of these left, like it's numbered in the tens left, because we just keep seeing them destroyed over and over again. As I say, it's a particularly nasty creature. It fires an aerosol spray prior to detonation that literally lights the air on fire. It'll burst your lungs. It'll burst internal organs if you're within range. So the more of these that the Ukrainians take out, the better everybody is. Now, in Belgorod, we saw another ammo dump hit. And there you can see those pops in the sky. That's air defense attempting to take out the drone. The drone hit an ammunition warehouse in Belgorod. This is on the territory of Russia, where we have a new incursion into Russia, right? The Ukrainians are now holding a little bit of Kursk and a little bit of Belgorod, and they're making that advance into Russia count by targeting new areas that are now within range because they have pushed into Russia. This shows the Russians for who they are. They're saying that they have looted enough Ukrainian goods for one day. This is what they do, right? They're just terrorists pillaging the country. Now, I wanted to play this for you. It's a piece of Russian propaganda coming out of Russia. Take a look.
Люди думают, что Донецкий прогресс остановился на кассах самообслуживания, молоко пошло дальше, оставив позади космонавтику, искусственный интеллект и всякие штучки будущего. Да-да, именно. Они поставили новые весы в овощном отделе. Вы вообще видели такое когда-нибудь? Я еще не отошла от кассы самообслуживания, а они снова меня повергли в шок. Ну что, комментаторы, как вам настолько интересный виток прогресса? Ожидали?
So sorry, it's Donetsk, right? So this is inside the temporarily occupied territories where the Russians destroyed everything. And what this girl is saying is, oh, look, we have all this new high-tech self-checkout stuff at the grocery store. And thanking Russia and dear leader for bringing this progress to Donetsk. It's the sycophantic muling of slaves. Now, I want to thank everybody who came through on the temporary residence permit. Thank you. You guys know that you're the sponsors of all the lives this week. Chris Carter, Cynthia and Tony, Fitz, Jose, Elizabeth, Integral, and Jerry O. So thank you all so much. Now, not you guys, right? Not you guys, but other people. I have another ask. I have not been outside of Kyiv with friends. There was one trip to Warsaw, but I was totally alone, and that was just for processing paperwork. I have not been outside of Kyiv for 2 years with friends, and I need a vacation. I really do. Now, some friends of mine are going to Amsterdam, and I'm lucky. I have a buddy in Amsterdam who is going to put me up. So the transportation to and from there is covered. Arn, Lars, not Lars, Lars Nelson, Larry Nelson. Larry Nelson, Big D, and Arn. Holy cow, I just mentioned it on last night's live. And those guys came through for me in spades, and they have covered all of my travel expenses. So I have a place to stay. I'm meeting friends there. I'm very excited for a few days off. Now, legitimately, I took the bus. I'm taking the bus across Europe because it was the only thing that I couldn't even afford it, right? But with the help from these guys, now it's covered. Anyway, I really need a couple days away. Amsterdam is an expensive city. It is a city of a cafe culture to which I am particularly amenable. So I don't want there to be any illusions about if you send me money for my vacation, what I'm going to spend that money on. It should be obvious to everyone. But look, you know as well as I do, you got to take a break. You got to give yourself breaks. I've been going nonstop for 2 years, and I am deeply appreciative of everybody that keeps me going. And this is clearly like a very selfish thing I am doing. And I need to do it for myself. I need to be with some Americans for a couple of days where I'm not struggling to understand what's being said to me, where we have common points of cultural reference, where I can relax and we can hit the Rijksmuseum. The last time I was in the Rijksmuseum, I got locked in. Me and my ex-wife were there, and we met the relics curator who brought us into some closed exhibits. And before we knew it, it was 2 hours since the museum had closed, and he had to let us out with his security pass. Oh, that was a great day. So I'm looking for that kind of thing again, you know. So look, if you're a person that can't afford to send me $5 for the Patreon, then please ignore this request. But if you are a person who has extra income and wants to help me have a good time in Amsterdam, PayPal me whatever you can, and you will get a video sponsorship from Amsterdam, right? That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be making out and about videos of our adventures in Amsterdam, and you will be the sponsor of those videos, just like Arn, Big D, and Larry Nelson will be. So thank you guys so much. I just need some spending money, but Amsterdam is very expensive. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much. Thanks for your consideration of this stupid thing that I am doing. And I will see you in the live tonight. Take care.